What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In our last video, we covered the top 5 unsolved mysteries in North Carolina, cases that still haunt families and investigators to this day. From decades-old murders to brutal killings that went cold, these are the top 3 solved cold cases in North Carolina. This video contains discussion of murders and violent crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. Number 3. The Myers Park Rapist. Charlotte, North Carolina, June 1990. A suspect broke into a home in the Myers Park neighborhood and sexually assaulted someone inside. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would terrorize one of Charlotte's most affluent neighborhoods for nearly a decade. Over the course of the next 9 years, there were multiple sexual assault cases that were disturbingly similar. The suspect had a specific, terrifying method. He would break into residences at night, armed with a knife. He would then force his victims, often at knife point, to move to a different location where he would sexually assault them. The suspect was meticulous. He wore a ski mask and gloves. He made sure his victims never saw him in good light. He left virtually no evidence behind. Between 1990 and 1999, detectives identified at least 15 sexual assault cases connected to the same perpetrator. Of those 15 cases, 13 involved victims under the age of 18. The last known assault occurred in January 1999. By that time, the media had given the unknown attacker a chilling nickname, the Myers Park Rapist. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Sexual Assault Cold Case Unit was formed in 2006, in part because of cases like these. Investigators were determined to identify this predator. They had DNA from the crime scenes, but for years, there were no matches in any database. The DNA profile sat in evidence storage, waiting for technology to catch up. Investigators described the suspect based on witness accounts as being between 5 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 4 inches in height, with a muscular build and appearing to be 20 to 30 years old at the time of the attacks, but his race was unknown because of the ski mask. In the late 2010s, CMPD's Cold Case Unit secured a grant to run evidence through advanced forensic genetic genealogy testing through Parabon Laboratories. The lab was able to tell investigators, your person is going to be related to a great-great-grandfather or a great-great-grandmother. From there, it was up to the detectives to do the legwork. Sergeant Daryl Price, with the department's Cold Case Unit, described the painstaking process. We have to figure out who possibly was in Charlotte, who had the opportunity, who had that particular mindset to do these crimes. Detectives spent hundreds of hours going through the internet, poring over websites like Ancestry.com, building family trees, and narrowing down possibilities. After exhaustive research, they arrived at a name that had never come up in all the years of investigation: David Edward Doran. Investigators learned that Doran lived in Lincoln and Iredell counties, just outside of Charlotte. Family members confirmed a crucial detail: Doran had been a cat burglar in Myers Park. He'd even been convicted of possession of burglary tools in Charlotte in 2001. Everything fit. Police were able to obtain a DNA sample from Doran, and it was a match, 1-to-1. Perfect match. Sergeant Price stated with certainty, we were able to get a sample that was a known sample from our suspect and compared it 1-to-1, and they matched. So we know that that suspect is the Myers Park Rapist. But once again, there was a cruel twist. David Edward Doran had died on June 24, 2008, more than 13 years before investigators identified him. He was 67 years old when he died. He'd lived 9 more years after his last known assault, never facing justice for the terror he inflicted on at least 15 victims. On December 6, 2021, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department held a press conference to announce they had identified the Myers Park Rapist. Before the public announcement, all 15 victims were personally notified by investigators. Sergeant Price described their reactions. There was a mixture of feelings. They were all grateful. For some victims, it had been more than 30 years since they were attacked. Many had been just children at the time, teenagers trying to sleep safely in their own homes. Now, finally, they had a name. They knew who had terrorized them. Even though Doran could never be prosecuted, there was closure in knowing the truth. "Our closure means nothing compared to the closure of the victims," Sergeant Price said, "but we're all thrilled. It brings some kind of conclusion to lots and lots of hard work." Detectives believe Doran was responsible for at least 2 other cases in the Charlotte area, beyond the 15 officially linked to him. More troubling, Doran also lived in California, Texas, and Ohio throughout his lifetime. CMPD alerted law enforcement agencies in those states to see if they had any unsolved cases fitting Doran's profile. Who knows how many more victims there might be? While the case is officially solved, some questions remain. Why did the attack stop in 1999? Was it because Doran moved away? Did something happen to him? Did he go to prison for something else? What made him finally stop terrorizing young girls in Myers Park? We may never know the answers, but what we do know is that thanks to forensic genetic genealogy and determined cold case detectives, 15 victims finally know who attacked them and that he can never hurt anyone again. Number 2, The Boy Under the Billboard, Bobby Witt. September 25th, 1998, Mebane, North Carolina. A landscaping crew was cutting grass under a billboard along Industrial Drive, near where Interstate 85 and Interstate 40 merge. It was a routine job on a sunny afternoon. Then, one of the crew members spotted something glinting in the North Carolina sun, tangled in the brush beneath the billboard. It was a small human skull, sun-bleached and partially hidden just outside the wood line. Had it been just a few feet further back, you wouldn't have even seen it. Major Tim Horn of the Orange County Sheriff's Office, one of the first law enforcement officers on the scene, would later recall. The child's skeletal remains were partially clothed, with legs still draped over some brush. The body was badly decomposed, but investigators quickly determined several key facts. The victim was a young boy, approximately 10 years old. He had been strangled to death. There was no sign of trauma at the scene, meaning he'd been killed elsewhere and dumped under this billboard. But the most haunting question was, who was he? Major Tim Horn took over the case. He became personally invested in a way that would define the next 20 years of his life. "We got a call from a mowing crew that skull and skeletal remains had been located under a billboard near Mebane," Horn said. "We responded. That particular day, I did the crime scene processing for this particular incident. Early DNA testing was primitive. It took investigators a couple of years just to determine that the remains were male. Anthropologists examined the skeletal remains and initially believed the child was possibly Hispanic. Investigators explored those avenues extensively, checking missing persons databases, reaching out to Hispanic communities, showing sketches that artists had created by reconstructing the boy's face from his skull. Nothing matched. Years passed, then a decade, then another. Major Tim Horn refused to let the case go cold. He did something unusual, something that shows the depth of his commitment. "I kept the case file box under my desk, where it was purposefully in my way," Horn explained. "Every time I turned, I hit it with my leg. I did this so the little boy couldn't be forgotten." For 20 years, every single day, Major Horn hit that box with his leg and remembered there was a little boy who deserved his name back, a little boy who deserved justice. As DNA technology advanced, Horn had the remains tested again and again. Each time, technology improved just a bit more. Each time, they learned a little bit more. Further genetic testing revealed that the child wasn't Hispanic after all. He was biracial, of European and East Asian descent. The time of death was narrowed to around June or July 1998, just a few months before the discovery. But still, no identification. In December 2018, Major Horn reached out to someone who just made headlines for helping catch the Golden State Killer, Dr. Barbara Ray Venter, a genetic genealogy consultant. Dr. Ray Venter reviewed the boy's latest DNA test results and went to work. Using online DNA databases, including GED Match, she searched for genetic matches. On December 26, 2018, at exactly 1:44 p.m., after 20 years, 3 months, and 1 day, Major Horn received the phone call he'd been waiting for. A close family member had called back after receiving a voicemail from investigators. The DNA had matched to a first cousin living in Hawaii. That relative helped investigators trace the family tree back to Ohio. The little boy finally had a name. He was born January 7th, 1988, in Michigan. His father was Caucasian, and his mother, Myung-Hwa Cho, was from South Korea. Bobby was raised in Ohio near Cincinnati in the small town of Sardinia, east of the city. His cousin, Wendy Mosteller, had been close with Bobby growing up. "I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and he was my only first cousin," Mosteller told reporters. "He spent a lot of time at our house, and he was the little brother that I always wanted and never had." She remembered Bobby as a sweet boy who loved playing video games and air hockey. He had an air hockey table in his bedroom, she recalled fondly. Barbara Molman, Mosteller's mother and Bobby's aunt, said, "Bobby was a very brilliant little boy, and he was funny. He had a real dry sense of humor." When Major Horn contacted Bobby's family in Ohio, they were absolutely stunned. "It came as a total shock to us when we spoke to Major Horn," a family spokesperson wrote in a statement. "Our world fell apart. We had no idea that Bobby and Myung-hwa were no longer with us and had not been for a very long time." The family had been told that in 1998, Bobby's mother had taken him back to South Korea to raise him there. They believed Bobby was alive and well, living in Korea with his mother. They had no idea both were dead. Once Bobby was identified, Major Horn began searching for his mother. He combed through databases for reports of unidentified women matching Myung-hwa Cho's description. He found something devastating. On May 13, 1998, 4 months before Bobby's body was discovered, an unidentified Asian woman's body had been found behind a debris pile in Spartanburg County, South Carolina, about 215 miles south of where Bobby was found. Like Bobby, she was discovered along a road running parallel to Interstate 85. The woman had been bound. She had ligature marks on her wrists. She'd been suffocated to death, what the coroner called respiratory insufficiency. DNA testing confirmed the worst. It was Bobby's mother, Myung-hwa Cho. Now investigators knew who the victims were, but who killed them? The answer was horrifying and close to home. Bobby's father, John Russell Witt, was already in federal prison in Kentucky, serving time for armed robbery. He wasn't scheduled for release until 2037. When confronted by investigators from Orange County, South Carolina, and the FBI, John Russell Witt confessed to murdering both his wife and his son.
"The terrible things that I did do are in complete contrast to how I feel about little Bobby and dear Myung-ha, whom I love and miss, excuse me, beyond words."
Witt dumped the boy's body in Orange County, where investigator Tim Horn worked the case for 20 years, trying every new technology to identify the boy until finally one succeeded. He said Witt's family agreed to the plea deal.
They're very happy that there's going to be some kind of conclusion, that he'll be punished. They're still having a hard time, dealing with this.
The story John Russell Witt told was chilling in its callousness. He'd met Myung while serving in the Air Force in South Korea. They married, and she moved to the United States with him. They lived first in Ohio, where Bobby was born, then moved to Concord, North Carolina, when Bobby was 10 years old. In early 1998, Witt began having an extramarital affair. He wanted to be with his mistress, but his wife was in the way. So, on or about May 12, 1998, in Concord, John Russell Witt killed his wife. According to Assistant District Attorney Anna Orr, he wrapped her body in a blanket and drove it to South Carolina to dispose of it behind that debris pile. He moved his mistress into his home shortly after, but there was a problem. The mistress didn't get along with 10-year-old Bobby, so Witt decided to kill his son too. On July 29, 1998, about 2.5 months after killing Bobby's mother, John Russell Witt took Bobby for a drive. Assistant District Attorney Anna Orr revealed what happened in court. He requested that Bobby get in the back seat and told him they were going to play a game, told him to lie down with his eyes closed. At that time, he crawled into the back seat, got on top of Bobby, and suffocated him with a towel. Then he drove Bobby's body to Mebane and dumped him under that billboard along Interstate 85. He told his mistress that he'd put Bobby on a plane to be with his mother in South Korea. He told his family in Ohio the same lie. For 20 years, everyone believed it. In May 2019, a grand jury in Orange County, North Carolina, indicted John Russell Witt on first-degree murder charges in Bobby's death, as well as charges for concealment of murder. On January 15, 2020, Major Tim Horn's last day before retirement, John Russell Witt pleaded guilty in an Orange County courtroom to 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of concealment of death. During his sentencing hearing, Witt begged for forgiveness. He said he'd been haunted by the murders for years and had even tried to kill himself in prison out of guilt in 2001. Superior Court Judge Alan Badauer sentenced Witt to 26 to 32 years for each murder, to be served consecutively after he completes his current federal sentence for robbery in 2037. When that sentence is complete, Witt will be transferred from Kentucky to Federal Correctional Complex in Butner, North Carolina, and then to state prison. Effectively, John Russell Witt will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Bobby Witt and his mother, Myung-Hwa Cho, were cremated. Their remains were sent to Bobby's family in Ohio. On May 18, 2019, Bobby and his mother were laid to rest together at Mount Orab, Ohio. After 20 years of being nameless, after 20 years of being known only as the boy under the billboard, Bobby was finally home with his family. His family wrote, "Bobby was the sweetest, kindest, and funniest little boy. He always had a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye. And to think of that being snuffed out brings a chill to our hearts. Now we need to bring him and his mother home, where they belong, and bury them next to his grandmother who adored him." For Major Tim Horn, solving Bobby's case was the capstone of a remarkable career. He retired on February 1st, 2019, just days after Bobby was identified. "We were disappointed and we were disheartened at various stages when we didn't get the results we were hoping for," Horn told reporters. "But we kept batting it around and we never let it hit the ground, and ultimately, we caught this one." Sheriff Charles Blackwood said, "This case is an example of dogged determination of investigators who refuse to give up. The efforts of Major Tim Horn and the entire investigation division were exemplary." Even after retiring, Horn stayed in contact with Bobby's family. When Witt was finally sentenced in 2020, Horn said, "They're very happy that there's going to be some kind of conclusion, that he'll be punished. They're still having a hard time dealing with this." Bobby's case became a symbol of why cold cases should never be forgotten, why evidence should always be preserved, and why some detectives, like Major Tim Horn, never, ever give up. Number 1. The Durham family murders, the Dixie Mafia. February 3, 1972, Boone, North Carolina. A massive snowstorm was battering the Blue Ridge Mountains. Roads were treacherous. Visibility was near zero. It was the kind of night when you stayed inside and waited for it to pass. At their home on Clyde Townsend Road, just off the 105 bypass, the Durham family was trying to ride out the storm. Bryce Durham, 51, operated the modern Buick dealership in Boone. His wife, Virginia, 44, was a homemaker. Their 18-year-old son, Bobby, was a student at Appalachian State University. Their daughter, Ginny, and her husband, Troy Hall, lived about 4 miles away. Around 10:30 that evening, Ginny's mother called them, and what Virginia Durham said on that phone call would haunt Ginny for the rest of her life. Virginia told her daughter that men were in their house and were holding Bryce and Bobby hostage. Then, the line went dead. Troy Hall immediately tried to drive to his in-laws' house to check on them, but the snowstorm was so severe he couldn't make it alone. He got a neighbor to help him, and together they fought through the blizzard to reach the Durham home. What they found inside was a horror scene. All 3 members of the Durham family were dead, found in their bathroom. Bryce and Bobby had been drowned, their heads forced underwater until they died. Virginia had been strangled to death. The home was in a state of disarray, clearly ransacked. Strangely, nothing appeared to have been stolen. A bag stuffed with hundreds of dollars in cash was left untouched. If this was a robbery, the killers hadn't taken anything. This wasn't about money. This was something else. The case became locally known simply as the Durham case. For decades, it was Watauga County's biggest unsolved mystery. The State Bureau of Investigation took over the case. Theories circulated for years. Was it related to Bryce Durham's involvement in exposing a local car dealership that allegedly turned back odometers on used cars? Was it a business dispute? Were these professional killers with military training? Every lead went cold. Every theory hit a dead end. For 47 years, the case sat unsolved. Detectives retired. New investigators took over. Technology advanced. but the Durham family's killers remained unknown until 2019. In May 2019, the White County Sheriff's Office in Georgia received an unusual visitor. Shane Burt was conducting research for a book about notorious crimes in Georgia. He was at the sheriff's office going through old case files when he mentioned something his father had told him during a prison visit years earlier. Shane said he'd been very close with his father, Billy Sunday Burt, who had died in prison in 2017 while serving a sentence for murder. During one of Shane's visits to the prison, Billy Sunday Burt had told him a story, a confession of sorts. He admitted to killing 3 people in the North Carolina mountains during a heavy snowstorm. He said they'd almost gotten caught. When deputies at the White County Sheriff's Office heard this, alarm bells went off immediately. 3 people, North Carolina mountains, heavy snowstorm, almost got caught. They immediately contacted the Watauga County Sheriff's Office in North Carolina. Sheriff Len Hageman and his investigators traveled to Georgia to interview an 81-year-old man named Billy Wayne Davis, who was serving a life sentence in Augusta State Medical Prison for a different 1971 murder. Investigators conducted interviews with Davis between 2019 and 2021. At first, Davis was reluctant, but over time, he began to open up about events from nearly 50 years earlier. Billy Wayne Davis confessed to being the getaway driver in the Durham family murders. He implicated 3 other men, all now deceased. His father, Billy Sunday Burt, Bobby Jean Gaddis, Charles David Reed. These 4 men were part of a loosely organized criminal network that operated across the southeastern United States during the 1960s and 1970s. Historians and law enforcement dubbed them the Dixie Mafia, though they weren't a formal organization like the Italian Mafia. They were more like a loose confederation of violent criminals who worked together on various jobs: robberies, murders for hire, arson, extortion, and other violent crimes. Billy Sunday Burt was particularly notorious. He was suspected or convicted of multiple murders. Bobby Jean Gaddis was known for his willingness to kill. Charles David Reed was another enforcer in their circle. These weren't amateurs. They were experienced, violent criminals who'd gotten away with crimes for decades. Billy Wayne Davis told investigators that the Durham murders were a contract hit. Someone had paid them to kill the Durham family. But who and why? Davis claimed he didn't know who ordered the hit or what the motive was. He was just the driver. He said the 4 men drove from Georgia to North Carolina during the massive snowstorm. The plan was to kill the family and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Some theories emerged. Theory 1 was that Bryce Durham had been involved in exposing a competing car dealership that was allegedly turning back odometers on used cars, a federal crime. Perhaps someone in that operation wanted him silenced. Theory 2. Some investigators wondered if the killers might have hit the wrong house. The Durham home was somewhat isolated. Could they have been sent to kill someone else and murdered the Durhams by mistake? Theory 3. Perhaps Bryce Durham had witnessed something he shouldn't have, or knew something that made him dangerous to someone. The truth is, we may never know the real motive. Davis insisted he didn't know, and the other 3 men who might have known, Burt, Gaddis, and Reed, are all dead. Based on Davis's confession and the crime scene evidence, investigators pieced together what happened that snowy night. The 4 men arrived at the Durham home during the height of the snowstorm. The severe weather provided cover. Neighbors couldn't see what was happening, and anyone driving by would be focused on the treacherous roads. They forced their way into the house. The Durham family was confronted and taken hostage. At some point during the ordeal, Virginia Durham managed to make that desperate phone call to her daughter before the line was cut. The killers forced Bryce and Bobby into the bathroom, where they drowned them in the tub or toilet. Virginia was strangled to death. The house was ransacked to make it look like a robbery, but the killers didn't actually take anything of significant value. That bag of cash was intentionally left behind. Taking it would have made it look like a robbery. Leaving it made the crime look more mysterious, more puzzling. Then they drove away in the snowstorm, which covered their tracks, literally and figuratively. By morning, fresh snow had erased any tire tracks or footprints. It was almost the perfect crime. Billy Sunday Burt told his son Shane that they almost got caught. What did he mean by that? Davis revealed that as they were leaving the Durham home, they saw headlights approaching through the snow. It was Troy Hall, Ginny's husband, trying to reach his in-laws after Virginia's desperate phone call. The killers barely escaped before Troy and his neighbor arrived at the house. Had Troy gotten there just minutes earlier, he would have encountered 4 armed professional killers. That close call, that near miss, is what Billy Sunday Burt remembered decades later when he told his son about the murders. As investigators dug deeper into Billy Sunday Burt, Bobby Jean Gaddis, and Charles David Reed, they discovered these men were suspected in dozens of violent crimes across the Southeast. Billy Sunday Burt was convicted of multiple murders. In 2017, while serving life in prison in Georgia, he died at age 79. He went to his grave with countless secrets. Bobby Jean Gaddis was also a convicted murderer who died in prison. Charles David Reed similarly had a violent criminal history and died before facing justice for the Durham murders. Billy Wayne Davis was the only surviving member of the crew and the only one who could tell the story. Sheriff Len Hageman and his team faced enormous challenges. All the physical evidence was 47+ years old. 3 of the 4 suspects were dead. Witnesses had died or their memories had faded. The original crime scene had long since been altered, but investigators were meticulous. They interviewed Davis multiple times between 2019 and 2021. They corroborated his story with historical records, old case files, and surviving witnesses. They confirmed that all 4 men had the means and opportunity to be in Boone on February 3, 1972. They verified Davis's involvement in the Dixie Mafia network. They checked his story against the physical evidence from 1972. Everything matched. On February 2nd, 2022, almost exactly 50 years after the murders, the Watauga County District Attorney held a press conference. District Attorney Seth Banks announced, after a very lengthy and painstaking investigation and numerous interviews with numerous individuals, law enforcement is convinced that Billy Sunday Burt, Bobby Jean Gaddis, Charles David Reed, and Billy Wayne Davis were the individuals responsible for the deaths of Virginia, Bryce, and Bobby Durham. He continued, "I cannot explain with mere words the amount of work that has gone into this investigation. This has been a 50-year journey, but today I'm pleased to say that this case has been solved. We know who killed the Durham family." The announcement was bittersweet for the Durham family. Ginny Hall, the daughter who received that desperate phone call from her mother 50 years earlier, finally knew the truth. She knew who had murdered her parents and brother. She knew why they had come, or at least that it was a planned hit, not a random act. But there could be no criminal prosecution. 3 of the 4 killers were dead. The only surviving member, Billy Wayne Davis, was already serving life in prison in Georgia for a different murder and would never leave prison. District Attorney Seth Banks explained, "While we have identified the individuals responsible, they are all deceased with the exception of Billy Wayne Davis, who is currently serving a life sentence in Georgia for a different murder. There will be no criminal charges filed in this case." Sheriff Len Hageman said, "While we cannot bring these individuals to trial, we can give the Durham family the answers they have been seeking for 50 years. We can tell them who killed their family members and why, to the extent that we know. The Durham family murders take the #1 spot on our list because they represent both the longest cold case to be solved in North Carolina and one of the most shocking revelations. For 50 years, the people of Boone wondered who could have committed such a brutal act. The answer, professional killers from Georgia, part of a criminal network, hired to execute a family during a snowstorm, was more chilling than anyone had imagined. Ginny Hall, now in her 70s, finally had closure. Her children and grandchildren finally knew what happened to their family members that terrible night in 1972. And the Durham family could finally rest in peace, knowing their killers had been identified and that the truth, after 5 long decades, was finally known. The Myers Park rapists' victims waited over 20 years. Bobby Witt waited 20 years just to get his name back. And the Durham family waited 50 years to know who killed their loved ones. But in every single case, justice, in some form, was finally served. Which of these solved cases impacted you the most? Did you know about any of them before this video? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more true crime content from North Carolina. As always, stay alert. The shadows never sleep.